Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. In Book 1 of Cicero's On the Nature of the Gods, one of the key topics that is being discussed by two of the characters, one of whom is an Epicurean, the other of whom is a skeptic, is superstition. And the idea is that superstition, which is just a transliteration of the Latin superstitio, has been dealt with adequately by Epicureanism. That's what the Epicurean is going to say. And then the skeptic is going to say, well, perhaps so, but there's a lot of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as the proverb goes, meaning that Epicurus not only gets rid of superstition, which they both agree is a bad thing, but also gets rid of other things that we want to hold on to. So what we're going to see first is this is discussed by Velleius, who is the Epicurean, and he says that what Epicurus, is going to put forward is both piety in worshiping the gods, so that's a good thing, right? And freedom from superstition. Now, how is he doing this? Well, the very first sovereign maxim of Epicurus says that which is blessed and eternal can neither know trouble itself nor cause trouble to another, and cannot feel anger or favor, since all such things belong only to the weak. So, gods don't get angry, but, this is kind of a key point, they also don't show favor, gratia, in Latin. They're not going to be helpful. And he says, if we sought to attain nothing besides piety and worshiping the gods and freedom from superstition, what has been said would have sufficed, because the exalted nature of the gods, being eternal and supremely blessed, would receive human beings' pious worship, and all fear, this is the superstition part, all fear of divine power or anger would be banished. Human beings wouldn't be worried, are the gods going to punish me? Ooh, I don't know how they're going to look at me. And if you look at ancient Greek and Latin poetry and other discussions, well, there are serious concerns about this. The gods can even be envious of you, right? And so, because they are blessed beings, he says, anger and favor alike are excluded from the nature of a being blessed and immortal. These being eliminated, we are menaced by no fears in regard to the powers above. So that's the Epicurean point of view. And Cotta is going to say, well, yes, you do in fact have freedom from superstition. And he says that's the favorite boast of your school. And he says, well, that's easy to attain when you deprive the gods of power. When you say that the gods don't actually do anything. When you take away vis, power, the force from them. And so then he's going to say, let's consider some other people besides Epicurus. So what about the atheists like Digoras and Theodorus? What are they actually saying? He says, maybe you think it was possible for them to be superstitious, who denied the existence of the gods altogether. And he says, for my part, even somebody that nowadays we would call an agnostic, like Protagoras, who said, I don't know if the gods exist or don't exist. I'm not going to take a stand on this sort of thing. Did they manage to take away superstition? He says the doctrines of all these thinkers do, in fact, take away superstition, but you know what else they take away? They take away religion, which consists in piously worshiping the gods, right? So they not only take away the fear, they also take away any sort of relation between human beings and God. So is Epicurus going down their line, or is he like Prodicus or some of these other people? What did Prodicus say? The gods were personifications of things that were beneficial or useful to the life of human beings. If you're going to say that, he says, what sort of religion is left after that? Or those who teach that brave or famous or powerful men have been deified after death, and it's these who are the real objects of the worship, prayers, and adoration. That's not religion. That's just a cult of the dead. And we don't really think that, they deserve worship in that case. And he says this theory was developed further by Euhemerus, who said exactly that. We have culture heroes, they're turned into gods, as well as by a Latin poet Ennius. And he says, Euhemerus describes the death and burial of certain gods. Should we think of him as upholding religion or utterly and entirely destroying it? So, what's being said here? Listen, you Epicureans, you're like these people here. You are getting rid of superstition, but you're also destroying religion in the process. Then he brings up Democritus. Now, why talk about Democritus? Because Epicurus took a lot of ideas from Democritus, including his atomic theory. And he says, even the eminent man Democritus, from whom Epicurus derived the streams that watered his little garden, no fixed idea about the nature of the gods. At one moment, he holds the view that the universe includes images endowed with divinity. Another, he says, there exist in the same universe the elements from which the mind is compounded, and these are gods. At another, that they're animate images, which are wont to exercise a good or bad influence over. And also that there are certain vast images of such a size as to envelop and unfold the whole world. And, he's saying, listen, he doesn't even have a consistent story. How could you actually have adoration, pious worship, anything like that? So if Epicurus is actually relying on Democritus for his understanding of the gods, well, that's not going to work either. So what is going to be the upshot of this? There's even more damning criticism that gets made here. So Cotta says, Epicurus, in abolishing divine, and it could be translated as beneficence, better since it's opum, coming from opus, divine activity, that the gods actually do anything, and gratiam, that very same term gratia that was used earlier, care or favor. Since the gods don't actually show favor and don't do anything, Epicurus uprooted and exterminated all religion from the human heart. This is pretty extreme. There's no possibility of any sort of religion. Why? Because why the hell would you worship a God that doesn't do anything and doesn't care at all about you? I mean, there is an objection here that gets made a little bit earlier. Well, we just recognize that God is great and all that, but you're not getting anything from the exchange. So what would be the point of it? He says that what Epicurus is doing is taking away what is the most essential element of supreme goodness and excellence, which is benevolence. He says, what can be better or more excellent than kindness and beneficence? Take those away from God and make him devoid of love or care or esteem, any of these sorts of things for human beings or even for the other gods. And you don't really have a God, do you? You just have beings that maybe,
I mean, you can't even say they're super powerful because they don't do anything, right? So that's going to be a problem. And it seems a little weird and inhuman, doesn't it? So he's also going to bring up, and this is towards the very end of the work, Posidonius, who is a Middle Stoic philosopher who Cicero actually got to interact with. And he says, Posidonius argued in his book on the nature of the gods that Epicurus didn't really believe in the gods at all. Why did he talk about the gods then? Well, he was trying to avoid what gets translated as public hatred or, invidia, envy. He's trying to avoid getting in trouble with people. So he's going to, come up with a doctrine. And he says he could not have been so senseless as really to imagine God to be like a feeble human being, but resembling him only in outline and surface, not in solid substance, showing no kindness or beneficence to anybody, caring for nothing, doing nothing at all. And he says, listen, to begin with, a being like this is an impossibility, but if a God like this exists, then why would we care? It's not really much of a God. So you could say that this is an accusation of practical atheism on the part of Epicurus. That if Epicurus is taking away superstition with his conception of what God would be like, he's also taking away the possibility for any genuine religion on the part of human beings in relation to those God or gods that the Epicureans would be putting forward. So this is a pretty interesting attack because he is saying, yes, you Epicureans are good in this respect, but the way that you go about arguing for it, for superstition being wrong, also takes away something that we really want, which is genuine religion, human beings relating themselves to gods who presumably are great and care about human beings.